Simone Harris, a black woman in her early 40s, stood at the towering entrance of Greenwood County Courthouse, aware that every eye seemed to track her as she moved. Even before she reached the security checkpoint, she felt the familiar weight of unwarranted scrutiny. Her posture tightened, and she clutched her folder of evidence a little closer. A guard took her ID, peering first at the photo, then back at Simone with an almost palpable distrust. She noticed how quickly he waved through the person ahead of her, yet with her he paused, flipping her ID over as though expecting to find something amiss. Inside, the corridor buzzed with murmured conversations and the quick taps of dress shoes on polished floors. Several courthouse staff members glanced her way, their quiet chatter tapering off. Simone caught the phrase discrimination suit before the group fell abruptly silent. She gave them a curt nod. She'd dealt with this kind of skepticism her whole life. Being a black professional in a predominantly white environment had taught her to keep her composure, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed the sting she felt. At courtroom 4B, Officer Logan stood like a gatekeeper, clipboard in hand. When Simone approached, he barely glanced at her summons before narrowing his eyes, looking her up and down with an air of suspicion. Though he eventually stepped aside, the moment underscored an unfortunate truth. She was being judged long before she set foot in front of the bench. Simone settled into a seat in the gallery, heart pounding but resolve unshaken. She might be surrounded by doubters, but she had mountains of evidence, emails, performance reviews, statements from former co-workers, all pointing to a culture of systematic bias at Harper & Cole. As she waited for her hearing to begin, she reminded herself she was no stranger to prejudice. This time, however, she intended to confront it head-on, determined to expose a powerful corporation that thought it could dismiss her, both literally and figuratively. Simone barely had time to steady her breath before a court clerk announced, "Case number 702, Harris versus Harper & Cole." Heart-pounding, she rose from her seat in the gallery. She could sense the silent curiosity of onlookers, some leaning forward, intrigued by this seemingly ordinary woman who dared to file a discrimination suit against a corporate powerhouse. Her attorney, Adam Caldwell, beckoned her to the plaintiff's table. He appeared calm, yet there was a determination in his eyes that bolstered Simone's confidence. Judge Ellsworth, a tall, imposing figure with sharp eyes and an even sharper tone, took the bench. Word around the courthouse was that he prided himself on efficiency. He hated drawn-out hearings and prided himself on cutting straight to the chase. As soon as Adam introduced himself and Simone, the judge raised an eyebrow, briefly scanning the file before him. In that instant, Simone felt the weight of a lifetime's worth of skepticism. People who had underestimated her, people who had assumed her accomplishments must be luck instead of talent. To Ellsworth's left sat the defense team. Leading them was Alan Barkley, a polished, silver-haired attorney who exuded self-assuredness. With a slight smirk, he shuffled a stack of neatly printed documents, each page representing Harper & Cole's official stance that Simone's termination had been a straightforward business decision, nothing more. It was a stance Simone knew to be false. Behind him, two junior associates busily typed notes on laptops, occasionally sneaking glances at Simone. She met their eyes once, only to watch them avert their gazes quickly, as if they were embarrassed by what they were about to defend. Adam laid out their preliminary argument. Simone had been passed over for promotions despite outstanding performance reviews, and new hires less qualified, yet not black had advanced swiftly. When Simone complained internally, the corporate response was dismissive at best. The final blow came when she was terminated under suspiciously vague circumstances. As Adam spoke, Simone couldn't help noticing Judge Ellsworth's expression, revealing flickers of impatience. Would he allow them to present the crucial emails she'd collected, or would he dismiss it all as some overblown workplace squabble? Just as Adam finished summarizing the case, Barkley stood, projecting a confidence that bordered on condescension. He insisted that Harper & Cole maintained a strictly merit-based system. Simone swallowed a surge of anger. She'd heard that line before, usually from someone determined to ignore the reality of bias. She closed her eyes, reminding herself of the evidence in her file, the countless nights she'd spent sorting, labeling, and cross-referencing every last email. The air in the courtroom felt thick with the unspoken tension that comes from battling more than a single employer. Simone was fighting a system that had casually dismissed her worth for years. As she steeled herself for the next round of arguments, her mind drifted back to the suspicious glances she'd endured at the entrance. She vowed, then and there, that she would not walk away unheard. Simone clenched her fists under the table, trying to keep her composure as Adam introduced the next piece of evidence, a set of emails that laid bare a pattern of biased decision-making at Harper & Cole. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Judge Ellsworth, having already shown signs of impatience, leaned forward, tapping his pen against the bench. Despite the judge's evident disinterest, Adam pressed on, emphasizing the unmistakable undertones of prejudice that Simone had endured hints in email chains that she was not the right fit, or that her background might make certain clients uncomfortable. With each email revealed, Alan Barkley's smirk faded bit by bit, and an uneasy hush descended over the spectators. Yet, just as Adam prepared to delve into the most damning messages, the ones that clearly indicated her superiors had conspired to push her out, the judge abruptly cut him off. "We've heard enough for now," Ellsworth said, raising a hand to silence Adam mid-sentence. His tone was clipped, revealing a frustration that seemed disproportionate to the evidence at hand. Simone's heart raced. She could feel an ominous weight settling in the air, the creeping sense that fairness was slipping through her fingers. Adam inhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Your Honor, these particular emails provide crucial context, showing a direct correlation between Ms. Harris's complaints and subsequent disciplinary actions." But before he could finish, Ellsworth rapped his gavel once, then fixed Simone with a glare. "I said enough," he repeated, voice colder this time. Simone's pulse thundered in her ears. She had waited too long, gathered too much proof, to let it all be cast aside now. Summoning her courage, she rose to address the judge, only for Ellsworth to cut her off again, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "Ms. Harris, if you speak out of turn one more time, I will have you removed." A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Eyes darted between Simone, Adam, and the judge, as if they couldn't believe how quickly the atmosphere had shifted from a legal argument to an outright standoff. Simone swallowed the lump in her throat. She felt the sting of injustice all over again, first in her workplace, now here, where she was supposed to find redress. "But, Your Honor," she began, "these emails—" "Officer Logan," Judge Ellsworth snapped, not waiting for Simone to complete her sentence. "Escort Ms. Harris from the courtroom." A collective gasp erupted among the spectators, and a wave of shock passed over Adam's face. Logan strode forward, his expression tense as he reached for Simone's arm. She jerked away reflexively, but the officer maintained a firm grip. Within seconds, Simone found herself being led down the aisle, an unwanted spotlight trained on her. Disbelief mingled with anger in her chest as she watched the judge's stern gaze follow her to the door. All the work, all the nights of lost sleep, and she was being silenced in the very place designed to uphold justice. Officer Logan guided Simone through the heavy double doors and into the corridor, releasing her arm only when they were well out of the judge's line of sight. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, and she fought the urge to argue her case to the officer. After all, Logan was simply following orders, yet there was no denying the sting of being silenced so abruptly. She sank onto a wooden bench, still clutching the folder of incriminating emails that Judge Ellsworth had refused to review. A creeping sense of hopelessness began to settle in. Would her fight really end like this, cast out of the courtroom before she could fully present her evidence? Moments later, the corridor door flew open with a clang. A flushed court clerk rushed toward Simone and Logan, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gulps. "Officer," she panted, nodding at Logan, "the judge needs Ms. Harris back in there immediately." Confusion rippled through Simone. The same judge who had just ejected her now wanted her returned? Logan looked equally perplexed, but nevertheless motioned for Simone to stand. "I'm not sure what happened," the clerk continued, pressing a folded slip of paper into Logan's hand. "But there's a call from the White House. Something about ensuring Ms. Harris has a fair chance to present her case." Simone's heart pounded, an odd mix of shock and cautious relief. She followed Logan back toward the courtroom, uncertain of what awaited her inside. Her palms grew clammy around the handle of her folder, but she lifted her chin and steadied her breathing. If the judge had truly reversed course, she needed to be ready. The very idea of White House involvement felt surreal, yet she couldn't deny the hope stirring in her chest. Perhaps her case had caught the attention of someone powerful enough to force Judge Ellsworth's hand. When they re-entered courtroom 4B, a hushed tension greeted them. The defense team exchanged uneasy looks, and Adam Caldwell, who had been speaking with the clerk, shot Simone a reassuring nod. Judge Ellsworth, his expression visibly strained, cleared his throat. "Ms. Harris," he began, gesturing for her to return to the plaintiff's table, "it appears there may be additional evidence relevant to your claim. Officer Logan, please ensure she has provided any materials she requires. We will continue." Simone's pulse thrummed as she walked forward, standing once more beside Adam. She risked a glance at Alan Barkley, the defense attorney, whose cool poise had slipped into barely masked discomfort. The atmosphere crackled with a sense of impending revelation. For the first time since stepping into the courthouse that morning, Simone felt something resembling optimism. Still reeling from the abrupt turn of events, she silently vowed to make the most of this moment. She would be heard, and the truth would finally come to light no matter how many stony glares or roadblocks tried to push her aside. Adam guided Simone toward the plaintiff's table, his voice low yet firm as he reassured her, "We've got this. Show them what you have." Simone inhaled deeply, pushing aside the lingering anxiety from her earlier removal. Judge Ellsworth, with an almost reluctant stiffness, directed her to proceed. No one missed the tension etched into his features clearly. The unexpected call from the White House had left him in an uncharacteristically cautious mood. "Your Honor," Adam began, "we'd like to display the emails that establish a pattern of racial bias within Harper & Cole. These are essential to Ms. Harris's claim." He motioned to a projection screen at the front of the courtroom. Simone's heart quickened as she opened her folder, extracting the pages she'd painstakingly organized. Each document told its own incriminating story. Notes of managers questioning her fit for certain clients, memos where her name was conspicuously missing from promotion lists, and email threads where her competence was undermined using thinly veiled language. As the first email appeared on the screen, a hush fell over the room. Even the defense team, initially unruffled, now shifted in their seats. Simone could almost feel the air crackling with anticipation. She explained how, after receiving consistently high performance evaluations, she had been bypassed for promotions in favor of newer hires. In one particular email, a mid-level manager wrote, "I'm not sure Simone presents the right image for our top-tier accounts," a phrase Simone knew was code for something else. She was a black woman, and they believed clients might be uncomfortable with that. Judge Ellsworth, who had initially set a brisk, impatient tone, now found himself reading each line more carefully. Alan Barkley, the defense attorney, stood to object, claiming the emails were taken out of context, but Adam swiftly countered by pointing to timestamps, matching them with employee statements that corroborated Simone's allegations. The tension in the courtroom grew more tangible with every passing minute. Simone's voice trembled as she continued. "For years, I trusted this company to judge me by my work, yet these messages," she gestured toward the screen, "prove otherwise. They singled me out and pushed me aside because I didn't fit their narrow image." A ripple of reaction ran through the audience. Some gasped softly at the bluntness of the language, others exchanged knowing looks. Though Judge Ellsworth maintained a composed facade, Simone could sense the pressure mounting on him to truly weigh the evidence. Adam wasted no time introducing more emails, each more revealing than the last. By the time he finished, the defense's once smug confidence had vanished. The judge cleared his throat, sparing a brief glance at the courtroom door as though still recalling the earlier interruption. "We will take a short recess," he declared, striking his gavel. "When we resume, we'll hear any further evidence or rebuttals." With that, Simone exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time since entering Greenwood County Courthouse, she felt the stirring of genuine hope. The hardest part was far from over, but at least now backed by those damning emails, her voice would not be so easily ignored. The moment Judge Ellsworth's gavel signaled recess, Simone felt an undercurrent of energy surge through the courtroom. People stood, stretched, and began to talk in hushed yet urgent tones, as though they were standing on the brink of something monumental. Adam placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You did great," he said quietly, gathering the stack of email printouts into a neat pile. Meanwhile, the defense team huddled near the bench, their once confident expressions replaced by uneasy murmurs. It was clear that the evidence Simone had presented had unsettled them more than they cared to admit. Stepping into the hallway, Simone was startled by the flash of cameras and the buzz of reporters pressing forward. What had been a relatively private affair that morning had now ballooned into a full-fledged media event, thanks in part to rumors swirling about a phone call from the White House. Microphones were thrust in her direction as voices called out for a statement. "Ms. Harris, is it true someone in the federal government intervened? Do you believe Judge Ellsworth is biased?" Her heart pounded at the sudden attention, but she forced herself to stand tall. She'd fought too long and too hard to shrink away now. Adam deftly guided her through the crowd, offering a brief statement that they were confident in their evidence and looking forward to resuming the hearing. Still, the barrage of questions followed them down the corridor. Simone was used to being overlooked, but being overwhelmed was a new experience entirely. Some reporters tried to pry at her personal background, asking where she grew up and what drove her to challenge such a large corporation. Part of her wanted to open up about the countless hours of overtime she'd worked without recognition, the subtle put-downs she'd faced, and the emotional toll of being dismissed as angry or difficult. But she held back, reminding herself that the courtroom was the stage for her story, not the hallway. A cluster of onlookers had also gathered, some looking on with curiosity, others holding up phones to record what was happening. A few even mouthed words of encouragement when Simone passed by. She heard snippets of conversation. "Can you believe this went federal? I heard the judge had no choice but to let her speak." Despite the chaos, a strange mix of pride and apprehension swirled inside her. If this case was garnering national attention, then maybe, just maybe, the institutional biases she'd fought against for so long would finally be taken seriously. Eventually, Simone and Adam found a quieter alcove where they could speak with a little privacy. "This changes the game," Adam said, his voice calm but tinged with excitement. "They won't be able to brush you aside anymore." Simone nodded, running a hand across her temple. She could still hear the muffled clamor of reporters and spectators behind them. It felt as though her fight for justice had suddenly become a lightning rod for something bigger, a conversation the world was ready, or perhaps overdue, to have. And for the first time, despite the lingering tension and uncertainty, Simone felt that victory was within reach. Back inside the courtroom after recess, Simone felt the pressure settle once again. Judge Ellsworth, returning to his seat, glanced at the gathered crowd with a mixture of caution and residual impatience, as though wary of further surprises. Adam guided Simone to the plaintiff's table, setting down a thick folder of additional documents they planned to introduce. Across the aisle, Alan Barkley and his team appeared agitated, conferring in whispers while shooting occasional looks at Simone. The courtroom itself had grown more crowded. Curious observers, media representatives, and even an assistant from the district attorney's office had drifted in, drawn by the rumor of White House involvement. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, a silent acknowledgement that the stakes had risen well beyond a routine discrimination claim. Adam started by reiterating the key points of Simone's testimony, underscoring the emails that tied Harper & Cole's decisions to a clear pattern of racial bias. "We've established Ms. Harris not only excelled in her role," he declared, turning to face Judge Ellsworth, "but was also actively undermined through coded language and deliberate exclusion." Simone's heart pounded, each word reminding her of the many nights she'd lain awake, wondering if the truth would ever see the light of day. Now, no one in the room could deny the gravity of her allegations, especially with the renewed scrutiny sparked by that mysterious phone call. The defense tried to pivot. Barkley rose, adopting a tone of forced politeness that bordered on dismissive. He argued Simone's performance issues were documented, that she had simply failed to meet expectations despite the company's best efforts to support her. He referenced scattered remarks taken out of context and insisted there was no racist intent. Yet the arguments felt thin, particularly in the face of Adam's methodical breakdown of each email and the timeline that exposed a glaring gap between Simone's achievements and how she was actually treated. Each time Barkley attempted to redirect blame onto Simone, calling her disgruntled and uncooperative, Adam countered with factual evidence or testimonial excerpts that left the defense scrambling. Judge Ellsworth tried to maintain an air of impartiality, yet his gaze kept flickering to Simone, then to the thick file of records Adam had lined up on the table. A crack in the judge's earlier hostility began to appear. Perhaps the mounting public interest, combined with Simone's detailed evidence, had tempered his initial impatience. Meanwhile, an undercurrent of whispered speculation rippled through the observers. Who exactly had made that phone call? And what repercussions might follow if the court ignored the obvious bias? When Adam finally rested his case for the moment, a hush enveloped the courtroom. With tension hanging in the air, Judge Ellsworth shifted in his seat. "Mr. Barkley," he said, addressing the defense attorney, "I trust you have more to add?" Simone could hear her own heartbeat. The truth had begun to crack open Harper & Cole's defenses. Now it was a question of how far the court would let that truth go, and whether any last-ditch maneuvering could stand in the way of the justice she'd fought so hard to secure. After another round of back and forth in the courtroom, Judge Ellsworth abruptly announced a longer recess, leaving Simone and Adam to retreat to a small conference room at the far end of the courthouse corridor. There, they found themselves bombarded by a rapid succession of developments. First, Adam received word that Harper & Cole's executives had convened an urgent meeting off-site, presumably to strategize how best to contain the mounting PR disaster and legal jeopardy. "They're feeling the pressure," he he remarked, scanning a flurry of text messages from sources close to the company. Simone allowed herself a small glimmer of hope. If the defense was scrambling, it meant her evidence was far stronger than they wanted the public to believe. But the biggest surprise came a few minutes later, when Adam took a hushed phone call from an unknown number. Upon hanging up, he looked at Simone with an astonished, almost triumphant expression. "You won't believe this," he said, lowering his voice. "An employee from Harper & Cole just reached out. They're willing to provide internal documents that corroborate your claims specifically, meeting notes showing that certain managers wanted you gone because they didn't see you as a good face for the firm." Despite the underlying sting in that remark, Simone felt a surge of vindication. She had always sensed there were like-minded individuals within Harper & Cole who were appalled by the discriminatory culture but too afraid to speak up. Perhaps this was the break she needed to solidify her case beyond any shadow of a doubt. While Adam arranged a discreet handoff for these additional documents, Simone tried to process the whirlwind of events. A few hours earlier, she had been forcibly removed from the courtroom, her evidence brushed aside. Now, not only was the judge compelled to hear her out, but the corporate giant she was battling was teetering on the edge of exposure. Rumors swirled through the courthouse halls, with one clerk whispering about the White House call and another speculating that the Department of Justice might intervene. Even Officer Logan, who had once ushered Simone out under Judge Ellsworth's orders, offered her a polite nod when she crossed his path again, as if recognizing the seismic shift in the situation. Amid this newfound momentum, Simone remained grounded. She remembered sleepless nights, double-checking every email, summarizing every instance of microaggression she'd faced. The pain and frustration she'd endured now fueled her determination to see this through to the end. Settling for a mere apology or small payout no longer felt sufficient. She wanted real, structural change both at Harper & Cole and in any broader legal precedents her case might set. As the recess drew to a close, Adam slipped the newly obtained information into the growing stack of evidence. "Let's see them try to dismiss this," he said, flashing Simone a resolute smile. She nodded, heart pounding, ready to return to the courtroom and push her claim beyond a mere personal victory, into a true reckoning for everyone who had ever been told they just didn't fit. Returning to courtroom 4B after the recess, Simone and Adam exchanged a resolute glance, both keenly aware that the tide was shifting in their favor. The once dismissive energy from the defense team had transformed into palpable unease, evident from the way Alan Barkley shuffled through his notes with a tension that bordered on desperation. Judge Ellsworth, sited behind the elevated bench, surveyed the courtroom with an air of subdued gravity, perhaps sensing the gravity of the new evidence Simone and Adam had secured. A hush fell as the judge motioned for both parties to proceed with any final presentations. Adam cleared his throat, stepping forward to inform Ellsworth that they had obtained newly surfaced documents from a Harper & Cole insider. As he slid copies to the defense table, audible gasps rippled through the spectators. Even some of the courthouse staff, who had previously displayed only professional detachment, now leaned in to catch every word. These documents, Adam explained, included internal meeting notes and managerial communications that explicitly referenced Simone's unsuitable background, indicating a clear directive to phase her out in favor of colleagues who aligned better with the firm's image. The language left little to interpretation, and Barkley's face tightened in clear frustration. Judge Ellsworth regarded the papers with a furrowed brow, flipping through each page in a silence that seemed to last an eternity. Simone's heart thumped so loudly she feared others might hear it. This was the evidence she had prayed for, the key to proving not just implicit bias, but a deliberate, orchestrated plan to undermine her career. She dared a quick glance at the gallery, where some onlookers exchanged knowing looks. Others scrawled notes as fast as they could, no doubt capturing every word for social media updates or courtroom columns. When Ellsworth finally spoke, his voice carried a gravity that felt new to Simone. "Mr. Barkley," he said, peering over the rim of his glasses, "these documents, should they be authenticated, indicate a concerning pattern of misconduct." Barkley fumbled for a rebuttal, stammering about lack of context and incomplete records, but Adam quickly countered that the insider had verified each timestamp and email chain. Sensing that the defense was floundering, Simone could almost taste the shift in the room, a collective understanding that this case was no longer a matter of her word against the company's. The judge's gaze drifted toward the stack of exhibits Adam had laid out, then settled on Simone. "We may need to explore settlement discussions or proceed with a more thorough inquiry," he finally announced, striking his gavel with a hint of resolve. In that moment, Simone felt a powerful sense of validation. The voices that had once dismissed her were now forced to reckon with the reality of her evidence. This was not merely a battle for her own rights, but a watershed moment for everyone watching, reminding them that even the most entrenched systems of discrimination could be challenged and, if the truth was given the chance to be heard, dismantled. An expectant hush gripped courtroom 4B the following morning when everyone reconvened for what Judge Ellsworth declared would be the final session. Simone and Adam arrived early, meticulously organizing their files in anticipation of a possible settlement, or, failing that, a decisive ruling. Across the aisle, Alan Barkley and his team exuded a tense energy, flipping through legal briefs and conferring in low voices. The atmosphere buzzed with the weight of what was at stake. After days of dramatic turns and damning revelations, this case had grown far beyond a routine employment dispute. When the judge entered, the room stilled. He settled his reading glasses on the bridge of his nose and surveyed both parties. "Counsel," he began, "I trust you've had an opportunity to discuss any last efforts toward an amicable resolution." Adam stood, stating that he and Simone were prepared to proceed with the trial if necessary, but hinted they were open to meaningful structural reforms at Harper & Cole. Barkley, for once lacking his usual confident smirk, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we request a brief recess to finalize settlement terms," he said, carefully avoiding eye contact with Simone. The judge nodded, giving both sides one final chance to resolve the matter before placing it squarely in his hands. During the recess, Simone and Adam were ushered into a nearby mediation room with the defense team and a newly arrived representative from Harper & Cole's executive board. What began as a stilted negotiation soon opened into an earnest discussion when Simone laid out her non-negotiables: a formal apology acknowledging the racial bias she had endured, a significant compensation package, and, most crucially, the implementation of transparent hiring and promotion policies monitored by a third party. The executives exchanged uneasy glances, but they no longer held the upper hand. The internal documents Adam had revealed, and the White House's watchful eye forced them to concede. One of the firm's senior members, voice trembling with a combination of regret and pragmatism, finally said, "We are prepared to meet these terms." A sense of relief, tinged with lingering disbelief, washed over Simone as the settlement agreement took shape. She remembered the moment she was hauled out of this very courtroom, certain her voice would be stifled. Now, through a potent mix of undeniable evidence and timely intervention, her claims had not only been heard, but validated. When everyone reconvened before Judge Ellsworth, Barkley delivered a measured statement of apology from Harper & Cole. The judge, after reviewing the settlement terms, commended Simone for her perseverance. The gavel came down one final time, signifying an end to the trial's tumult. Outside, flashbulbs popped and reporters clamored for comment, but Simone, folder tucked firmly under her arm, paused to take it all in. Justice had not come easily, it seldom did, but she had refused to be silenced. In doing so, she sparked a necessary reckoning within a powerful corporation, and by extension, challenged the wider system. Her victory, forged in the crucible of public scrutiny and unyielding persistence, was a beacon for anyone who had ever been told they simply didn't fit. In many ways, Simone's story reminds us that standing up for what is right often requires patience, fortitude, and the courage to speak out even when others are eager to dismiss us. For older audiences, there is an especially powerful lesson here. Your voice and experiences matter, and they can spark change no matter how entrenched the system may appear. Age can bring wisdom and perspective, and that hard-earned knowledge can become a beacon of hope and guidance in moments of injustice. This case also underlines the importance of seeking help from supportive allies, be it friends, family, or even unexpected sources in positions of power. Working together allows each of us to tap into resources we might otherwise overlook. Finally, it underscores the need for perseverance. Setbacks are inevitable, but every effort to shed light on wrongdoing can become the catalyst for meaningful progress. In a fast-moving world, older generations carry the history, resilience, and clarity to stand firm, ensuring that respect and fairness are not just ideals, but realities we continue to strive for. Ultimately, it is never too late to speak your truth and help create a world where everyone's dignity is upheld. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.